Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I like to discuss how Parliament yesterday voted in favour of introducing proportional representation to Westminster. No, seriously. I mean, last week an all-party parliamentary group promoting electoral reform had its official launch, and this week they've won a vote on reforming the electoral system. That is some mighty work. In reality, it's not actually going to introduce PR, but it is a very interesting talking point in order to make the issue discussion worthy. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Okay, so Phil, you say that MPs voted in favour of PR yesterday. Yes, that's right. They won by 2 votes. Should have won by 4. Get onto that in a minute. But this doesn't mean it's going to happen. Also correct. The vote was what's called a 10-minute rule motion. Now, obviously, we talk about governments passing laws all the time, but in reality, our government doesn't pass laws. It sometimes monkeys about with a few. It's Parliament that passes laws, which means that MPs are legislators, and if an MP wants to propose a law, then it's able to do so. And one of the ways it can do that is via the 10-minute rule bills. These can, of course, be passed into law. They're not just there to waste time. However, they do have to go through the same procedure as all other bills, but they are the lowest priority in terms of time given. But because this motion passed, it could come up again, unless it's either defeated in a vote or crowded out in terms of parliamentary time. I mean, one of those things will happen. This will never actually end up on the statute books. There's no way the government is going to run with something that makes such a major constitutional change unless they are in control of the process. But in this case, is it just a curiosity of no practical value? There's lots of people reporting it's a symbolic vote. I think it's more useful than that. First of all, it's now in the news, not necessarily headline news after South Korea's naughtiness yesterday, but it is in the news that Parliament seems to have voted to change the electoral system. Just as with the assisted dying bill proposal last week, it's something that the public are very much in favour of, according to polling, and now MPs have voted in favour of it. However, unlike the assisted dying vote last week, not a lot of MPs took part. In fact, it was nowhere near even half of all MPs voting, so we can't actually describe this as a clear parliamentary opinion. But it is still a really useful vote nonetheless. First of all, 59 Labour MPs voted in favour. So we now have a list of 59 Labour MPs who are definitely in favour of PR. There will be others as well, of course, who didn't vote either way because either they weren't at Westminster or because they're ministers who don't tend to get involved in these sort of things. There were also 50 Labour MPs who voted against it. So if you are in favour of electoral reform and your MP is one of those 50, you could strike up a conversation with them about why they voted against it, if you like. It's worth noting that Rupert Lowe, this is why I say it should have won by 4 votes, not 2. Rupert Lowe of Reform UK voted against it. What Charlie? His party is vocally in favour. It's one of their policies that they're in favour of it. Lee Anderson, remember, Lee Anderson's supposed to be the chief whip for Reform UK. He can't even get his party's MPs to vote the right way when there's only 5 of them, and one of them's him, and one of them's Nigel Farage, who never turns up, as he didn't yesterday. So in reality, all he had to do was whip 3 MPs to vote a particular way and couldn't even get that right. But anyway, this vote could actually be useful, although it will be low priority. And I'm going to guess the government won't want it coming back before they're ready to go on electoral reform, assuming they ever are in the foreseeable future. It should still come back at some point, or at least it has the chance. It could be crowded out, I suppose. If it does come back, then that means a proper debate, and the government will have to set out its position. Now, Labour's official position is that first past the post should be replaced, just they don't know what with. So when the debate happens, will whichever minister taking part in the debate rule it out? Will they rule it out this Parliament, but not for the future? Or will they just use very cagey language, which might make people think they're ruling it out, but they're not really? One of those occasions to carefully consider the exact wording used, because that wording will be lawyered up to the max, I suspect. And when it comes, I say when, if it comes up for a vote again, will Labour whip to vote it down, whip their MPs to abstain, letting the Tories vote it down for them, or leave it as a free vote with the intention of just letting it run out of time or crowding it out? Could be quite instructive. Also means that however your MP voted, or whether they voted at all, Because most didn't, now is a good time to open up a dialogue with your MP if you think it's an important issue. After all, we're pretty much, if it can come back, we're going to get a proper debate on it. It could be many months before it happens, but it could happen. So get ready for it. Get your MPs prepped for it. And as we're discussing electoral reform, I may as well go over a couple of other things of relevance. See, one, to go down, because it was presented for a vote. So the proposer, a Liberal Democrat MP, set out their reasons for pushing it. But someone got to argue against it as well. A Tory MP came up with several arguments against, which I shall go through. So first of all, that it's too confusing for the poor voter, the poor ignorant voter. It's too complicated, you see. Absolute rubbish. People use proportional systems in Scotland and Wales and a much more representative system in Northern Ireland. And we all did for European elections until 2019. Frankly, the public should be offended that any MP thinks people in England are too thick to use a system which people in the rest of the UK manage perfectly well. Second, that people might not know who to turn to with problems. Again, nonsense. In fact, it will be easier to know who to turn to. Right now, I have an MP. If I have a problem, I contact them. Not had to do so yet, but I know what to do. Before the election, I didn't have an MP. It was a lazy Conservative MP. Not that their party affiliation matters. What mattered is when you wrote to them, they didn't get back to you. For the last 2 years of this Parliament, at the point at which they decided they weren't going to stand again anyway, you couldn't get hold of them. So I didn't have an MP at all. In a proportional system, not only might you have a choice of who to approach, depending on how it's set up, but MPs may be a bit more motivated to do their jobs properly when more votes actually count. Third, he says that first past the post presents us with clear workable majorities. Now, in the past, he would have had a point there. First past the post works when you've basically got a choice of two. And, a few decades ago when I was younger, almost everyone voted either Labour or the Conservatives. However, it has to be said that quite a lot of people, particularly those without party affiliations, are not at all happy with single party governments. There's more rigorous debate where two parties are involved in forming the government. You don't have one political leader telling the rest what to do like a shepherd herding their sheep. But also, this argument doesn't work anymore anyway. It only worked when people essentially either voted Labour or the Conservatives, as in the past, with very few bothering with anyone else. But more and more voters have been voting for alternative parties. And over the past few decades, it's not just, this election we just had this year was the most split in terms of the vote, but it's been going that way. It wasn't an aberration. It's been going that way for some time. And yes, it's produced a clear majority this time, but the system is buckling. When not much more than half of all votes cast were for either Labour or the Conservatives, you're getting to a point where, never mind the morality of crowding out the other parties, you are mathematically going to get hung parliaments becoming more the norm anyway. So if you're going to have multi-party governments, they may as well represent the majority of votes at least. It's just as well he didn't say they form stable governments, because some do that, because then I'd have to remind us all that of the last 5 parliaments, only one of them was stable. That is, didn't change the Prime Minister partway through, and that was the coalition government of 2010 to 2015. In fact, in the last Parliament, we had 3 Prime Ministers, 2 of whom are no longer even MPs. Finally, he said that with PR, governments don't form quickly, that you get behind closed doors deals, which he described as undemocratic. It's again, what? Discussing things behind closed doors undemocratic. Single party governments have all of their discussions behind closed doors. When Keir Starmer formed his government, he didn't hold public discussions about who got different cabinet positions, did he? And frankly, if these are the best arguments they can come up with for keeping first past the post, that English voters are too thick to cope with a different system, that it's good that we have to be stuck with a single MP to turn to and hope they're not a lazy bastard who doesn't attend to their constituency work, and that it would mean 2 or more parties actually talking to each other, then I don't think they've got an argument at all, to be honest. Finally, as I'll always say, the thing about electoral reform is that polling shows most voters want it, but I'm not sure how strongly. There's a momentum building here. So if it's important to you, as it is to me, put your shoulder behind it as much as you can. Not everyone's got a lot of time they can spare for these things. But there are ways to raise the temperature. You can discuss it with your MP, worth doing, because, I mean, the assumption has to be there will be a proper debate at some time. Like I say, it could get crowded out, but there could be a proper debate at some point. You can also join a group who promotes the idea. Like if you're a Labour member, like I keep saying, there's the Labour campaign for electoral reform. That pushes internally. You can join. If not, you can join, say, Make Votes Matter or a group like that. Or you could join both. Why not? Go nuts. The more members a lobby group has, especially if they are inside or have links to political parties, the more clout they have. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.